In AWA, the tag team title was another thing. That was a recognized world tag team title. It was dominated by Bockwinkel and Stevens for 72, 73, 74, and 75. Vernon, Billy were champions at one time, Crusher and Billy, Crusher and Bruiser. But they would go back to Bockwinkel and Stevens. And finally, Blackjack Lanza and Bobby Duncombe with Bobby Heenan beat Bruiser and Crusher. And on July 7th, 1977, they lost to two kids named Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell.
Really? I don't remember that.
How tough was it not only being the boss's son, but the boss is an all-time great, and all of a sudden now you're one half of the tag team champions? How much pressure did that put on you?
You know, with the guys in the AWA, none. They were he always said they were such great professionals. I mean, Lanza came in that night after the match, and he said, "You guys really deserve this." You know, and that was pretty nice of Jack to say that. I mean, and doing it for us. But you know, it was kind of ironic because Jim and I went to college together. We trained together, and played football together, and then we trained in Vern's camp, and then Jim wrestled there a while, and then he went to Kansas City, and he was starving down there, and I stayed in the AWA, and you know, did my thing, and I wasn't trying to be another Vern Gagne. I was trying to create my own footsteps. And I said, Dad, you know, we'd always talked about it in the camp. Can't Jim come back and we team up? He says, you're not ready, you're not ready, you're not ready. So then finally he said, okay, we brought Jim back, teamed us up. We worked a little angle. We only did, this is funny, we only did 2 angles a year.
That's right. And was that a quota, or it just kind of worked out that way?
That's all we did. No, that was Vern, that's it. You don't give them any more than that. So they worked on with Ray and Nick and Bobby when they brought Bobby in against Jim and I on TV.
Yeah.
And busted me up pretty bad. And Vern wasn't there. Larry Henning came to my aid, who was a partner of those guys at the time, and turned Larry. And then Larry and Jim wrestled for a while. While I was out for about 6 weeks, they made all the money, and I got nothing.
It was still fresh in people's minds.
I do.
So
see, even the promoter's kid will bitch. I didn't get paid, and they were drawing all these big houses. I said, but. So finally, when I got back, they said, okay, they booked us in Peoria, Illinois. You know, they still weren't sure if Jim and I could get over.
Because you were a departure. Now, look at the other teams that I just mentioned. Where were they? You bear no resemblance to
I hope not.
Bruiser and Crusher, Hennigan Race, the Vachon brothers, Hardboiled Haggerty, and you guys were like, it was like a rock and roll express type of thing, where all of a sudden here's these young, good-looking guys that are not old, beat-up, bald-headed veterans. And
what did the veterans want? They wanted
fresh meat.
Fresh meat. They figured this was it. So they threw us in Peoria, Illinois, in high school down there. It seated about 4,000 people, and they usually drew about 1,000 people, maybe 1,500 tops. And we get down there, and the place is jam-packed, and they turn people away. And we had with Nick and Ray, how can you not have, you know, a fantastic match? Yeah. The people went crazy. So they booked us in one of the majors. They booked us in Denver before Nick and Ray with Larry Hynemi, Lars Anderson, and Buddy Wolf. They were the team right under Nick and Ray. Yeah. And we knocked them off that night. In fact, Lars was so pissed off about it, he got in a fight with us in the locker room afterwards. But it really established us in Denver, so they threw us back in there on the next card with Nick and Ray, and we sold it out. And that turned out to be a really great town for Jim and I. They could put us in there cold with anybody, and that building would be full. It would just, I went to school in Wyoming, so Denver, the Post and Rocky Mountain gave us a lot of press all the time. But I don't know, we were fortunate. We were, you know, being in the right place at the right time and the right combination for what they needed.
Well, one of your big rivalries was with two guys we were talking about earlier, Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura, and obviously could not be two more dissimilar individuals in the ring. What about outside the ring? Describe Ventura and that time, and for the people who, Adrian Adonis unfortunately gone before his time, a car wreck, but Adonis at that point hadn't let his weight get out of control. He was
240 and he could go.
He could go like crazy. And then there's Jesse, who can talk like crazy and can't necessarily go, but
It was for some reason it clicked. And for a year and a half, we wrestled them almost, it was so sickening. I didn't want to get in the ring with them anymore. We couldn't stand looking at them. They probably couldn't stand looking at us either. But every promoter wanted it. It drew money, and why it drew, to this day, I don't know. I know that we had sensational matches, but Adrian carried it. And Jesse, we just had to, you had to sell for him. You get a little comeback on him, and Adrian knew how to feed and keep the thing going.
I think, and also Jesse, he could talk, and he looked the part. He looked like $1 million. So maybe that's.
Well, everybody knew he was. I mean, he was a coward, but he shot that mouth off, and the people knew it.
The tag team situation was really pretty hot through the whole decade. You guys started out from 81 to 87. You guys started out as champions. Blackwell and Patera had a run. Crusher and Barron had a run. And then from one extreme to the other, on August 25th, 1984, the Road Warriors win the title from Crusher and Barron. And the Road Warriors, obviously, at that point, were barely a year in the business, and they didn't really have the idea, and they weren't real careful with the legends.
No.
And Bruiser and Crusher suffered in Chicago because it was the same way that Bruiser and Crusher got over 30 years beforehand.
Right.
We're bigger and stronger than everybody. We're going to beat them up, and they can't do anything about it. But this time the boot was on the other foot.
Yep.
But talk about the Road Warriors' impact, because they, for a short time there, they brought some people in. They got so hot.
If they would have known how to work.
Oh, you'd never stopped them. It
would have been phenomenal. Yeah. Joe has said that to me over the years now.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw him not too long ago, and he said, we didn't quite get it then. He said, and it's too bad. And he said, when I remember back, and we hated working with you too because you were smaller and that, but he said, Jesus, that one match in Winnipeg, and you guys tore that place down. He said, it was all you guys. And he said, I have more respect, and I wish we could have known, what we know now and had good matches with you.
I think it was, God, who was it? Might have been Paul Ellering that told me the story one time, or maybe it was just somebody unrelated, but when they worked with Bruiser and Crusher, one of them went and just picked Bruiser up and was going to slam him, and that was like the first time in 30 years, and whoever told me the story might have been Paul, but he said he heard Bruiser in that voice say, "What are you doing?" And as he goes up. So they made a big impact, but then they were there about a year, and they lost the belts to Garvin and Regal, and they went to work for Crockett. And Jimmy Garvin and Steve Regal, I thought, Steve Regal, who has ever seen Steve Regal? Whatever happened to him? Where is he gone?
I don't know.
What an insanely good worker.
Wasn't he good?
Oh, my God.
And he was a good talker.
Yeah, looked great.
Yeah. And with Jimmy Garvin, they were really a good team.
Yeah, and they had the pomp and the circumstance and the valet Precious, and that was a heat-getting team, and you could do something with them, and then they worked with Kurt Hennig and Scott Hall, and then it went to Buddy Rose and Doug Summers, and then finally the Midnight Rockers, which the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express took as an homage. We were never mad about it because it was
the best, ones who came up
the best of both. Well, they came up with the best of both teams,
and,
the Midnight Rockers.